What's up, guys? It's Sam Robles from Palo Fishing, and today I'm going to teach you the basics of catching snapper at Port Mansfield. So stay tuned.
In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.
But anyways, the first thing you need to know about going snapper fishing out of Port Mansfield is you have to know what the weather conditions are going to be like. That's probably the most important thing before and during your planning session. So you really want to know what the weather, the wind, the temperature, the forecast is going to be for that day. And for me, there's really two sources that I use for that. And actually, the second one is relatively new. But the first one I've always used NOAA, and if you go in there, they have different buoys that you can call on, and they can give you a good indication of what the weather is going to be like, how far it's at, and they break it out. You know, this is at shore, this is 20 miles out, this is 60 miles out, and so for fishing in state waters, I'm looking at that 20 to anything closer than that. So that's the first That's the first tool we use. The second tool that we use is a website. It's called magicseaweed.com. So just the way it's spelled, just the way it sounds, magicseaweed.com. And in there, actually, George Brown from South Padre, he was actually on our spearfishing video. He's the one that talked to me about that and showed it to me, and it actually works really well too. And so those two sources, you can go out there and really get a good indication of what the forecast is going to be. So now that you have a good, now you know where to go get the information. The next thing is, how does that information, what does that mean to you? And so really, so we run offshore in a Shallow Sport X3, so it's got this tri-hull on it, which is really good for breaking the waves. So really, it can go out, 5 to 7 feet, but 5 to 7 foot swells. Obviously, the frequency and how far they're coming will impact you. But that's going to be a rough day, and so we're looking for stuff that's 5 feet or less, and if it's 2 feet or less, then we're definitely going offshore, and that's what we're looking out there. So constantly we're looking at these websites, we're looking at the forecast. One of the ways I stay in tune of what's going on is I actually I stay posted on Facebook, and if George or some of the other captains are saying the weather's going to be nice, and I go validate that, hey, it's going to be nice on Sunday, Saturday, whatever, okay, we're going to go offshore, and we call our buddies, and that's how we plan to go. So so again, I'm looking for 5 feet or less, but that's in my Shallow Sport X3. You really need to know your boat and what you're going out on. Some guys can handle bigger waves, some guys can't, so it really just depends on what you're going to be going out there. But I have been out there on days where the wells or the waves have been 1 foot or less, and I've seen Shallow Sport Classics. I've seen just these small little boats, 16-foot Chiquitas out there. So it's if the weather conditions are right, any boat can go out there. So but that's where it all starts, is knowing what the weather conditions are. Alright, so we know where the weather is going to be good. The next thing we're talking about is safety gear. And so we're not going to talk about safety gear in the context of stuff that's already required. So I'm not going to cover your fire extinguishers, life jackets, and things of that nature. Instead, I'll be covering things that I think are important for traveling offshore or for fishing offshore. And so the first thing that you need to know is, the first thing that you have to have is a reliable GPS. I mean, this is going to be what helps get you in and out, and so it's very important that you have something that can guide you. And if you're fishing out of South Padre, it might be a little bit different, because at South Padre on certain days you can just go east, or you never really lose visibility of the shoreline, so it's not very difficult to maintain your bearing. But if you're going to be fishing a little bit further out, then you do definitely need to have a reliable GPS, and it's going to help you get back in, or some kind of compass or something to get back in, right? Obviously, if you're going off the coast, then you have to travel west when you're coming in, so something that kind of guides you to that direction. The second thing I always carry on my boat, and actually I keep this on my boat, I pulled it out here for today's video, but it's just really is this emergency kit. It's an Orion emergency kit, and I've added a few things of my own here to just kind of package it all together. But this is really, you got your flares in here, so these are pretty important. We've got our flare gun in case we have any issues and we need some help. Obviously, we carry some refills for our flare gun. And then this is a separate first aid kit that I have. So I have a bigger one, and this is just a small one I have just for another set of emergencies. And then the last thing I carry in here is just an extra set of batteries, and I'll cover why I use these batteries here in a little while. So this is really important. This is in case something happens, you need to get help and you can't get help. You have a way to kind of draw someone's attention from that you can really cover a far piece of distance. And then the last thing that I think is also really important is a way to call for help in the need to. So if you're out there, depending where you're going, you likely won't have cell phone service, so you'll need some kind of marine radio. And so my boat actually has a UHF radio on it built into it, so that makes it really nice. But over the years, I've acquired several of these handheld radios, and there's two of them on here, so I keep them, one in the front, one in the back, or one under the captain's seat, where it's pretty easy to get to. And these are really nice because you can call for help really quick on these. It's got a distress button, and these are GPS, and it'll send out the emergency SOS, and it'll give your location. And so it's a good way to stay and have a quick access, relatively quick access to help. And so it's definitely very important. It's very important that they're charged. I showed I had batteries in there, so these things run off a battery. There's a rechargeable battery, but you can pull out the battery and put in these AAA batteries in here as well. So collectively, your GPS, your emergency kit, and your marine radios are really important for staying safe while you're out snapper fishing. Alright guys, so the next thing you need to know about snapper fishing is the gear, the fishing gear that you actually need. So in this, the first thing, I covered it here on the safety, but it also serves as a very important fishing tool, is your GPS. Your GPS is telling you what that subsurface looks like, whether you're on rocks, whether there's mountains, whether there's hills. It just kind of gives you a feel for what's underneath the water. And as you know, some of those snappers like to gather it whether there's some kind of structure. So where we like to fish, there's a lot of rocks or artificial reefs, and the snappers group up there. So it's a good tool that you can use to help you find where those fish are or where they could potentially be. So having a good GPS and knowing how to use it is very important. And now the next thing is your rod. And so here's one of our rods that we use. This is a 7-foot, 30 to 80 pound rod. So it's actually a jigging action on there, so it makes it really well to kind of bounce that lure or your weight off the bottom. So it's what we use. I like using the conventional side, so which brings us up to our reels. So this is the typical reel I like to fish with. It's actually my favorite. I actually got 4 of these. These are the Abbott MXL 5.8 single speeds with I believe this is an 80 to 100 pound braid line on there. So I put this on there with this rod, and it gives me enough power and basically for any type of fish that I might catch where I'm out looking for snapper. The next thing you'll need to carry is leader line. So I've got 2 different kinds of leader lines. So I've got an 80 pound mono line, which is this guy. Just your typical monoline. This is actually just pretty cheap, so this makes it pretty nice to use this. And then I got my hands on some of this pretty cheap, so I bought some of this. This is, I believe it's like 300 pound leader line. I'm not sure exactly what it is anymore, but it's blue, it looks cool, and it lasts a really long time. So I've actually made leaders with this, and that'll last me, you know, I have some in here that'll last me, I've probably had them for like a year and a half already. Whereas this ones, they kind of start to bend, and they don't work very well. So this is more for single use. And if you want something that's going to last you a long time, you get this. And I think I paid like 15 bucks for this. So and this, I mean, I've had this for a long time, and obviously I still have a lot more leader on here for this. So definitely leader line's the next thing. For me, I like to keep all my offshore tackle in a separate box. So in a simple box like this, and then so whenever I'm going offshore, I just reach for this, and then I'll just kind of open it up to show you what we actually have in here. And it's a lot heavier than your inland one, so you can feel it. So obviously we'll cover that what we have here. so the first thing I have here, you'll see that I have here. I'm just going to show you guys what we have. We got a lot of different things in here. And so probably the most important thing from here is these egg weights for the style type of snapper fishing that we do. We like to use cut bait, mullet, or squid, and so we run an egg weight through the leader line. I'll actually show you how we make a leader here in a little bit. But different egg weights, I've actually gotten them from a size 4 ounce and up. I used to use some of the smaller ones. It just takes a long time for your lures to get down there, and sometimes those trigger fish will kind of take your bait on the way down. So some people like trigger fish, but I'm actually going targeting snappers, so I'd like to kind of get my lures down there pretty fast. The next thing is if you're gonna go snapper fishing, you have to catch your snapper. If you're gonna use bait with snapper, you have to use a circle hook. So these are the circle hooks I use, and it's a size 8. It's actually, here's the case. We'll put a link in the description below. But it's these eagle claws, and I've used different ones, and over the time, these are just the ones I prefer. They stay sharp, they last a long time, they're not expensive. I think I paid like $6 for a pack of 20, and they last a long time, and so they're pretty good. So this is what I would use on here. The other thing I have in here are these swivels with these quick twists. I actually don't know what the technical name for these are, but we've used them a lot. And so these are really important because obviously when you have your leader on there, you don't want that weight on the rod while you're traveling in and out, because that weight's going to swing, it's going to bounce around, it's going to hit stuff. So whenever we're going out, we just keep this on here, or quick connect. And then when we get offshore where we're going to fish, we just hook up our leaders and drop them, and then when we're done, we remove the leaders and come back here again. This is just to kind of prevent any damage for the boat going back and forth. And if you're going to use the leader, that kind of connection, you need a barrel swivel. So we've got these are, I believe this is a 300-pound barrel swivel that we have. I've got some more conventional weights, even though I don't really use these anymore when we're out snapper fishing. One of my buddies, Andy Salinas, actually got me into throwing some of these different lures, and I believe all of these are DOA lures and I've caught several snapper with him. Actually, the reason I use them is because I went snapper fishing with Andy, and he caught a lot of them using these lures, and so I've been trying to catch some, but I've caught like 2, I think, and they were both while I was with Andy. And so here's this little shrimp, big looking shrimp. They've got this. I know this is a DOA dead mullet, or not sure what it is, but I think it weighs like 2 ounces, and it sinks to the bottom pretty quick, and it's just another way of working it. I've got these in different colors. I've actually hooked up to sharks with these. That was pretty fun too. I've got some bucktails here, and then this is a 3 to 4 ounce bucktail, and then we have the little tail on the back end of it, a little soft plastic, and this is actually pretty short. Andy actually uses like a 10-inch worm on the back side of it, really just to kind of get that fish to bite. And then so these are, if you're out snapper fishing, this is what we use. I do like to carry a diving plug, and this is if we're trolling in or out, if it's really choppy, and if for whatever reason we see some kingfish, or we want to troll for kingfish, I've got 2 of these, and one's a bigger one, one's a smaller one, and the bigger one it'll sink further down, and the top one the smaller one will be closer to the surface. So we use these for trolling, but I'm not really big into kingfish, and so I don't really use them very much, but I do have them in case I do need them. And then the next thing that you'll need to know is that, or you'll need to have if you're going offshore fishing, is a gaff, right? So this is if you do hook up to a kingfish or a shark or something that you really needs to get gaffed up there. Something that's too big for your net. I do use a net when I go snapper fishing, but I mean, this is something that you can go out there and hook up to gaff whatever needs to be brought in. And then the other thing, actually, and this is one thing I thought I needed when I first got into snapper fishing. This is like a chum bucket bag, and like there's a lot of different ways. This is called the Chum Buddy, but actually I never used this. I used it a few times. It's more of an inconvenience. It gets in the way, it gets in the hassle. So I definitely don't think this is worth the $60 that we paid for. But it might be to someone else, I don't know. But for us, it hasn't really been that effective. And then in this box here is kind of where I keep all my loose stuff that's been used. we're ready to be used again. So here, I talked about having our leaders. So the idea is to have all your leaders made before you go fishing, and you just take them out and use your quick connects to get them set up. So this is a typical leader that we use here. So I've got, in this case, I've got an 8-ounce sliding egg weight, so it moves around here. The entire leader is about 30 inches long, and I just kind of put a knot on that to kind of prevent how far that egg weight will sink down. I've got a barrel swivel up on the top. I've got this 300-pound leader line, and I've got a loop knot on this circle hook. So collectively, this is how we fish. I'm working it. Depending on how the fish are, sometimes at the very bottom, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're mid, so you really have to use your depth finder and your fish finder to understand where they're at. I like to drag this on the bottom, and then once I feel in the bottom, then start picking it up and then kind of feeling where on that water column this fish are at. And it really just kind of, with this jigging rod, just kind of work that lure up and down, or that mullet up and down as you're coming along. So. But yeah, this is the gear that you need to know. This is the gear that you need to go when you're out going fishing. So, all right, guys, the next thing you need to know is actually where do you go fishing, right? So now you have an idea of, what to look for in the weather, what gear you need. The next thing is, right now, where do I go, right? So really, if you're going to fish out of Port Mansfield, it's important you understand what the regulations are. And really, you have state water and federal waters. And state waters is 9 nautical miles from the coast, and federal waters is out beyond that. And it's really important to know where you're at, where you're fishing, because of what the regulations are, as well as the season. So federal season changes every year. And the fish you can bring, the number and the size of the fish is different. So if you're fishing in federal waters, it's 2 snapper per person, and they're 16 inches or greater. If you're fishing in state waters, it's 4 fish per person and 15 inches or greater. So it's really important to know that. And the other thing that's really important to know is what Texas is doing as it relates to the federal season. So a few years ago, Texas actually opened up, it had an extended federal season, which basically fishermen in Texas were allowed to fish federal waters more often than kind of what the federal season was. But because of that, the regulations within state waters also changed. So yeah, even though you could go fish in federal waters or in state waters, that the Texas reduced the quantity of fish you could bring within state water. So wherever it is you're going, know what the regulations are. And because of that, it's important to really just have an annual with you, as well as to stay up to date and ask any questions. Call the game wardens, and they'll give you some guidance. So, but really, if we're going out of Port Mansfield, which is where I like to go snapper fishing, you have 2 choices for the most part. It's either head north or south. If you head north, you're heading to the North Rocks. And that's about 19 miles off the coast, off from the jetty. So it's like 7 miles off the coast, and it's about, I can't do the math right now, but it's 17 miles north, east of the jetties, and you're about 7 miles off the coast. And really, like if you look at a map and you find the land cut, and you draw, a line due east that's at about 7 miles out, that's actually where the North Reefs or the North Rocks are at. The second area you have is the jetty, the state park, which is about 7 miles southeast of from the jetty. So it's a lot closer. It's a lot easier to get to. And if anyone's interested in kind of getting started in snapper fishing, or hey, how do I do this? I think if you find a good day in the weather, and you have sufficient gear, head out to that state park. It's actually how I got started. And you can see the land from there on most days. And obviously, if it's cloudy or hazy, you won't get to see very much. But on most days, if you're fishing out there, you can see the land. And actually, if you go on a really nice day, there'll be a lot of boats out there to help you and kind of give you a hand if you need anything. Actually, I remember the first time I went out there, it was I was fishing on the surf side, and it was just a really calm day, and I saw something way out there, and Me and my cousin were out there, and we're like, hey, what's that over there? We just started driving over there because it looked like it was an island, and when we got there was probably about 60 boats out there fishing the state park, which is an insane amount of boats, but the water was like bathtub and there was no one out there. And so we drifted around and we found a little spot, and we actually caught some good fish. And then kind of after we did that we got hooked. And then it was like, okay, what can we keep doing? And that's how we ended up exploring. And really, I went to this. I started going to the South Jetty or to the State Reef, and we caught a lot of fish. But other people were telling me, you need to go north. You need to go north. It's like, I don't know how to do this. And at that point, learning how to operate my GPS became very important. My depth finder became really important. And then kind of the real breakthrough I had is when someone referred me to this book right here. It's called Texas State Waters and a Bit Beyond by Rick Jacobson. And there you go. Like, this is actually a really good book in here. It kind of breaks down what you need to know about snapper fishing, how to read your GPS, kind of just tackle. I mean, this is really a good book. It's not very expensive. It's about $30, $40, which sounds like a lot, but I mean, this is the information you get in here is really valuable. And specifically, the really valuable part, I mean, here we're talking about your depth finder and what to look for, what fish look like, how to read it, some of the settings on how to set your settings on your GPS. But really, a lot of the meat comes really right here on finding your, it gives you some very specific GPS coordinates. So here's some GPS coordinates for the North Rocks for Port Mansfield. So using this magazine or this book right here, you'll get a lot of good information, but it really covers all these areas. I fish areas out of South Padre, out of here, a lot of different places that I've caught a lot of fish using this. And then the other thing is, once you kind of do this more often, these points will serve more as reference points, and once you get out there, you use them as a general area. And then you kind of use your own fishing techniques or fish finding techniques to identify where to go and how to find the fish within this little area. So this point gets you, to 90 or to the 5-yard line, 10-yard line, to the red zone, and you can do some things in there to kind of optimize it and maximize the amount of fish you catch. So definitely a good book. Go pick it up if you're interested in learning how to snapper fish. All right, guys. So as you see, it doesn't take very much to get into snapper fishing here in South Texas, and specifically in Port Mansfield, where we fish out of. You can still go snapper fishing in state waters out of Corpus, South Padre Island. It's actually pretty common. And as you get more experience and you start learning how to use your depth finder, you'll find places that are really close. I know some of the guys out of South Padre, they're fishing, just a few, maybe a mile or less off the jetty. So very close, and you're catching snapper, you're catching some offshore type species, relatively close, relatively easy to get to. So even if you don't have the big wave cutting boat, you can get in there with your shallow water boats and catch some snapper, then come back in the bay and catch some snapper. So it's actually really cool fun. It's really fun. I'm sure once you get out there, once you try it, you'll actually fall in love with it. I mean, I personally really enjoy snapper fishing. It's just easy. It's just fun. Plus, I really like to eat snapper. So it just has a different taste to it. So anyways, so hopefully you got some information out of this video here, enough that you're encouraged or interested to go and try out the snapper fishing. Check out that book that I shared with you guys that has a lot of information, a lot of locations on where to get started. And not to say that you have to fish these spots individually. Actually, one thing you'll learn as you start snapper fishing is you're better to drift than to anchor up. You just cover more land, and even though you have GPS coordinates, which will actually, I'll put some down here below, you can, even though you have these coordinates, you can be sitting there, and depending on which way the tide is or the currents are coming and the wind is blowing you may not actually be fishing right over that reef. So drifting is a good way to capture some of that and really cover a different area, really find where the fish are at, and then you just kind of make that same drift, similar if you're drift fishing in the bay. So but hopefully that's enough information. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Please hit like and just hit the like button down here. And if if you have any questions or need information about getting started at snapper fishing in Texas, just leave us a comment below and we'll get back to you. So thanks again for watching, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
In my mind, I've got 'em big red on the line. That's where I go when I'm itching to feed my 7-day addiction.